So today we're going to talk about Chapter 3, the basics of PureScript. Here is, the obligatory start to every language for whatever reason. Well, it's not for whatever reason, it apparently comes from this book, is to print hello world. So we go over this. Every file starts a module with a particular name. In this particular case, we're just in module main. The reason for that is that this file is named main. If I recall correctly, you can't... I don't know if that's true in this language, so let's check. Can we change this to main A and still get this thing to build? Yes, we can. So, oops. I don't know why I keep doing that. So apparently that's okay. I thought we weren't allowed to change the name, but maybe that's just Haskell. So it seems like that's fine. Oh, I guess I could have just run that down here. I know it's a little harder to see this because obviously I'm in the way, but it is what it is. All right, second one. You don't necessarily have to do this, but by default, you don't get like a standard library, and so you have to import it. And this is basically the standard library called Prelude. As far as I know, there's no alternate preludes at the moment in PureScript. Maybe there is, but unsure. In Haskell, for example, there are multiple preludes that you could import. And then we have like another variant of import where we're specifically importing some type constructor called effect. And that's this type constructor right here. And then here we're obviously importing some, well, in this particular case, I know this is a function called log from effect console. And then we have our main function, which is the main entry point into a PureScript program. In this particular case, we run log hello world, and if you just spago run this thing, you get hello world. Not surprising. Cool. This shouldn't stop us from using the log function for quick and dirty testing of functions that we write. I promise that once we get through monads, this code will make a lot more sense. Yeah, so I think Charles forgoes explaining like effect and why you need it up front, and instead like talks about the language, and then at the end we talk more about do notation. So it's kind of like, look, here's a tool for logging stuff, and I'll explain it later. And unfortunately, it gets explained kinda far into the book, but that's okay. We're gonna start by learning about types, one of the most important parts of PureScript and Haskell, since they're both statically typed languages. Cool. Hi, buddy. It's my cat Layla. Say hi. So we have some primitives. So I think they're just trying to use JavaScript as an example to give you some context, but like I don't actually write a lot of JavaScript, but there are booleans, characters, strings, and numbers. So a boolean in, I guess I'll just write this in case somebody wants to look at this code like separate. We can write some comments and stuff. D equals true. I think it's just like this. Why did that change? Whatever. Alright, so there's your two booleans. I guess I don't need to write this down. It's kind of a waste of my time, isn't it? Yeah, let's not write these down. I think for people who programmed before, this shouldn't be too surprising. True and false. We have a character type. The only thing that distinguishes a character type is single ticks. And anything with a single tick is a character. So I guess this is some kind of hex notation, or Unicode notation. I don't use this very often, so I'm not super familiar with it, but you can do that if you like. Strings are defined with double quotes. There are line continuations and multi-line strings. Okay, so this is a multi-line that can contain quotes, but new line will not be a new line. Wait, really? That's kind of surprising to me. So if I find something surprising, obviously I'm going to probably mess with it because, you know, that's kind of weird. I wasn't expecting that. Uh, wow. Okay. Next thing I'm kind of curious about is if I put a new line here, is it like syntax highlighted? Okay, it's not. I was curious if like it knew the context of it being in a multi-line string versus a different kind of string. I'm also curious now what happens if I do this. Are these things like cut off? And we'll put some spaces here. Okay. Yeah, that's exactly right, Sully. So this just isn't a new line in the multi-line string syntax. I'm also kind of curious if this thing strips, because again, I don't write multi-line strings very often, so I'm curious if it's smart enough to cut that off or not. So let's find out. It is not. Okay, so it's like verbatim multi-line string. So I imagine there are also some spaces at the end of this. It seemed to cut these spaces. Oh, no, it didn't. They're right here. Yeah, there they are. Probably hard to see on the stream, but they're right there. So, okay, that's good to know. I think this is probably worth noting. This does not strip leading white space. So that's new. I don't use that very often. Okay, and we can apparently put Unicode characters in there. Cool. How you doing, Sully? I feel like I've seen your name before in chat, but I can't recall exactly. So we're having a chill morning stream, and then at 9 o'clock I'm going to switch over to my work stuff, and we'll work on a different project, just for reference. If maybe this is boring and you want to come see something more interesting later. All right, we have a number, which will represent a bunch of different numbers. Okay, yeah. It's hard to say, like, there's so many, you know, I guess pseudonyms. I'm not sure what the right term is there. Like pen names, something like that. Okay, so we import prelude so we can use the negation operator. If we have a decimal point, these things are interpreted. Wait. Must have decimal point, otherwise interpreted as integer. Okay. Negative numbers must be in parentheses. You will forget this. Yes, you will. I think there's some different rules. Yeah, I try to be as well, but it can be hard. Okay. Hey, Altern, what's going on? How are you? All right, so we learned about multi-line strings. Kind of surprising, actually. I wouldn't have guessed that this is how they behave, but like that's fine. I don't think people use multi-line strings all that often. These are PureScript specific primitives. They don't map directly to JavaScript types. Int array record. Yeah, like having to write this syntax gets really frustrating. But you do get to control when the lines start, which I guess is nice. Or where they start and end. So, I don't know. Is that helpful? Oh, wait, but... Yeah, no, that's right. That's the same in Haskell, I think. Getting ready to work? Cool. Well, maybe not cool, but something you gotta do, right? Integer. Here's an integer. I forget if these are... Okay, so these are 32-bit integers, and I would guess that there's like big integers. PureScript int 53 that supports full 53-bit integer. I assume there's probably also either rational numbers to give you like every integer, or like actual full integers like in Haskell. I just don't know what they are offhand. We could look them up. Arrays. Yeah. So if you've never done a like strongly statically typed language, arrays are not allowed to have different things in them. So unless you build a special list that can hold multiple things, which is something you can do in Haskell, but I don't see why you would in most cases. So this is an empty array of numbers, an array of integers, an array of strings, and then a nested array of numbers. Well, ints. I don't think array is written with cons lists, but I'm not 100% sure. Let's double check, because why was that so slow? I think there's also a list type that is like what you're looking for. So here's like a built-in array. And then that's it. There's also a built-in list type, I believe. Let me just look in here. Probably be faster. Yep. And then this is like a normal cons list like you would expect, I believe. Well, yeah, because here's the step, which is your cons list. There it is. I think you can write lists in that syntax as well. Let's find out. So, example, list, int. Nope. Where does list come from? I don't think that that's right. Oh, maybe it's not built in. Huh. Maybe you do get it from lists. Sorry, I guess I just haven't done this in a while, and so I didn't realize that. So if we add... Why can't I type already? Yeah, something like that. Exactly. Okay, so we get unknown type list. And it should come from data. Where does it come from? Data list types. I'm gonna guess that it's probably re-exported here, maybe. I can't really read that. This is the right button. No, look at that. Okay. You learned something new. So there you go. Is there an example in here? There is not. There's just a cons operator. And then I guess there's a nil in here. Yeah, interesting. Okay. I didn't know that. So I guess we could change this to... Oh my gosh. Not having a good typing day already. Something like this. And then... what do we need? We need list. Like this. Okay, so there you saw something kind of interesting. Which maybe you didn't know about. Unknown operator. Didn't I just import it? Oh yeah, there it is. Okay. So in PureScript, unlike Haskell, you can only have one unqualified import, otherwise you get a warning. So it really wants you to write something like import data list as list, for example. And then we would use list.list or list.nil or something like that. But we can just import them like this as well. So this imports both the data constructors from the list type and the cons operator. That's kind of interesting. I don't think I realized that. Yeah, yep, that's true. This is horribly formatted though, and it's gonna drive me nuts every time I look at it. Okay, so records are sort of the bread and butter of PureScript. There's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with records. So first, like if you want to define a type for a record, it just looks like this. And you can see the only difference between these two things is this double colon, which I always goof up the first time. So when you're defining a type, you're in the type context, you have to use this double colon. And when you're in the value context, you have to use the single colon. So this is like constructing this type. And this will fail if you don't provide a last name, which I can show you now. So if we remove this, it will fail. Because it'll say something like, while checking this expression, it has this type, but you have not given it. So lacks required label name, last name. So cool. It's pretty nice. There you go. Okay, so yep, again, I was just kind of talking about this. This is how you define a specific type that's a person and then reuse it. And you can also have nested records, so cool. We talked about that, nice. Syntactical oddity. To create a record, we use the following syntax. To modify a one or more elements. To modify a one or more elements. So there's a typo here. Let me just write the typo down so that I can. To modify. Yeah, that's got to be. Okay, so we're on page 57. Page 57, second paragraph. To modify one or more. Okay, cool. So I'll help get that updated. Hey Gil, what's going on? Okay, so we have a person. So we're gonna have like A or something, and this thing's gonna give us a type person equals open first name is a string and last, wait, was it age? It's age, and also its name, but not a big deal, I guess. Is an int, and then we gotta close that. A is going to return a person. I think we can use let in if I recall correctly. Let. I don't want to type this whole thing, so I'm not going to. And then we can say in person Randy. Keep pressing the wrong button. Okay, so this will compile because this will only update the fields that you've changed. And it's the only time that an equal sign is used in record syntax, so that's useful. So this is a record update syntax only. This is how you would define like a literal record, something like that. So pretty useful. Cool. Cool. User types. So PureScript comes with many useful built-in types, but without the ability to make your own types, you won't be able to model your problem domain. PureScript has the following facilities. We can do type aliases, we can define data types, we can define product, sum type or co-product types. I guess I don't think about them as co-product types, but I suppose that's right. Or new types. So a type alias, I mean, I can't think of many cases where I actually use type aliases other than for records, or I guess defining stacks, like your monad stack. If you don't know what a monad stack is, that's fine, don't worry about it. But I think that like this syntax is pretty much more popular in PureScript because of the way records work. And so you'll see this quite a bit. And I think you might see something like this, but I tend to stay away from doing this personally. I don't know if the reasons are the same in PureScript, but I think it's just habit more than anything. Maybe Gil has a suggestion. How often do you use like type aliases like this one? Yes, that's true. If you don't know what a monad stack is, just remember it's, as Gil just said, a lasagna but made out of burritos. Perfect. All right. We can make our own data types from scratch. Here's like the most basic one. Actually, I won't type this. I'll just talk about it. So we're defining a data type. On the left-hand side is a type constructor. And on the right-hand side is a data constructor. So I guess I don't know if this is. I don't use them much besides for records. Yeah. Like this one is pretty popular because like it would be kind of tedious to write this with like a few fields. So typically I would call this a type constructor, but I guess we can also call it a data type, which is totally fine. I think I don't see any problem with that. And then the right side is data constructor. That's the same term that's used in Haskell. Yeah. Okay, so the namespace for data types and data constructors are separate, so there's no name collision here. You cannot use a data constructor where a data type is used and vice versa. Yeah, which is why you'll often see like things renamed. I don't have an example in here, but I mean, I guess here's an example, right? My type and my type, these are two different things, and they'll be always used in different contexts, so you don't have to worry about those. By the way, if anyone has any questions or wants like me to, like, they're like, hey, I'm curious about X, like I'm totally fine doing some example code over here just to play with it. No problem if you're curious. This is pretty basic PureScript, and pretty basic programming stuff, so it's probably not all that concerning to you at the moment. Okay, so what's the point here? Data types and data constructors always start with an uppercase letter. Yeah, so type constructor, type constructor, type constructor, data constructor. This is a literal Boolean and then everything else is lowercase. Okay, so there are two types of algebraic data types, product types and coproduct types, also called sum types. I'll likely use sum type out of habit. Maybe there's a reason that Charles is using coproduct. I know at some point he does talk about category theory in the book, so maybe that's why he's referring to them that way. I'm not sure. So anyway, here is a sum type. You have a Boolean, and everyone's familiar with sum types. Is just like, do you think of them as sum types or union types in some languages? So you're probably familiar with bool, and this basically means it can be occupied by either true or false. So its cardinality is 2. It can either be this or that. Why is true lowercase? Is Boolean not defined? It is not. Well, wait, I think it is. It's just that this is a function in Prelude defined as true. Let's look it up, because I now want to make sure that I say the right thing. I'm confused. Let's look up Boolean. Oh my gosh. Hello? How do can I not look at the code here? Yeah, anyway, I thought it was just a function, but it's kind of unclear from here. Like, these are primitives, so they may not actually be pure script, if I understand right. Is this, like, easily linked to? Yeah, so I don't... Maybe there's more here, too? Hang on. I'm trying to, like, answer your question, because I'm actually not 100% sure. I wish I was sure. Yeah, there's really not much here. Anyway, that's just how it works. But we could define this bool as well. Yeah, okay. So this is just a Haskell name, but Boolean is... I always screw that up too, actually. Okay, so bool can either be true or false, but not both. That's what makes it a sum type, or union type, or coproduct. Okay, cool. Understanding this should help you see why we separate the different possible values of bool with... Oh, okay, I get it. I didn't quite understand what this was. Okay, so here's another sum type that's like some kind of error type. So we could say like, oh, you've given us invalid syntax. Here's another typo which we can fix. We're on page 60. 60. Failure. Reason. Second. Inhabitant. Invalid input. Okay, cool. So we'll fix that. Well, I'm not fixing it, but I'll tell Charles to fix it. Okay, here we have another type to model reason for failures, and then some like catch-all, as they just said. Yeah, the data constructor other is just a function. Its implied type is string to failure reason. This is incredibly useful, as it turns out, because you can just use it as if you were using a function. Yep. I don't know if he's going to discuss kinds here. So failure reason is a bit limited, though. Can you see why? Notice that other only takes a string. This can be fine for most situations. Okay, cool. This is fine. We're just making an extra parameter here, so we can say, I don't know, it's an other, maybe an object or something. Like if you were given JSON and it was invalid, I don't know. Oh, yeah, okay, so sure, that's a great idea. So you could have like a more specific error type if you wanted, with like an additional code. That's a cool idea. That's better than my idea. Okay, polymorphic versus monomorphic. This is monomorphic, no type parameters, and this one's polymorphic because it takes a type parameter. Cool. Yep. So triplet, ABC, A to B to C. Cool. Yeah, so here's an example of like triplet being used, the data constructor triplet being used as a function, more or less. It takes the incoming string, the length of the string, and however many vowels are in it. Cool. Yeah. So another like tidbit is it's called a product because it's the product of the cardinalities of A, B, and C, whereas a sum type is the sum of the cardinalities of A, B, and C. Well, in this case, yeah. Anyway, it's not a sum type, so. Okay. So we can change string stats to use a record instead, using the potentially ambiguous triplet. Instead of using, excuse me. So this one like makes it easier to figure out what is what, which is nice. And yeah, this is a very generic looking type, but you know, it can only be used in one place, which is arguably a good thing. Okay. Yeah, okay, so this is a good way to show isomorphism. So although these look different, they're the same shape and can be converted in between one another. So let's just write that function before he even asks about it, because you know that's a thing we can do. So well, first we need to do this. What am I doing? Okay, so if an isomorphism exists, that means there's a function that exists from here to here. So string triplet is going to take an S, a L, and a V. I think I have to put these in parentheses though. And this will give us a string stats. Do I need to... Sorry. Are there regular tuples with parens? In PureScript, there are not regular tuples. There is a library for tuples, if I recall correctly. Yep. But I think typically the way that I've like dealt with this in the past is I'll write something like type tuple equals first a second I can't type this morning. I'm still like waking up. Something like this. There you go. And then that way you have like kind of tuples. Okay, so this becomes the S. Like so. And you can see that it compiles. And then the other thing you need is, oh wait, maybe it doesn't compile? Seems to compile. I don't know why it was like trying to move that. So then we need a function from here to here. Can you have anonymous records in the type signature, like an Elm? Do you mean like, for example, if we did this? Something like that. Obviously this won't compile because we have string stats, but I think this is what you mean. We'll see. We're just gonna leave that there. Anyway, so we have this G. Do we have like record syntax like this? No, this one. I can't remember if this is a thing. But that would give us string length vowel count, like that. Think. Okay, so we can't do this. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, then yes, you can do that. So then you could just like anytime you wanted to use a yes, that's a thing. I'm pretty sure. Well, I mean, we can just type it, right? Let me figure out this real quick so that because I'm kind of curious. What is this called in record? Why can't I think of the name? No, you should ask cool questions. That's a cool question, I think. You should derail. Derailing is good. That's the best part about doing these books. Why can't I think of the name of that? Somebody help me. Record fields? It's not duplicate record fields. That's what's in my head for some reason. Expand fields of record pure script. Should be enough. Yeah, I think people would call that a spread operator a lot of times, but it's got a like the way you can do that in. Why would you no? The way you would do this in Haskell has a specific extension, and that's what I'm looking for. But yes, typically you would call that like a spread. Let's see what's in here. What I want to get is just like all of them. Okay, so these are wildcards. Yeah, this is a function. That's not quite what I'm looking for. Record updates. There's nothing in here. That's fine. I mean, we can just use this syntax as well. It's not that big of a deal. I was just hoping. What the heck is that thing called? Haskell expand record fields. No, this isn't it. Maybe it is wildcards. Well, this is the wildcard syntax, but it's not quite. That's more of a... Yeah, I think that's the right one. Well, no, but... Is that the right one? Yeah, it is the right one. There it is. Yeah, okay, cool. Record wildcards. Thank you. Oh, there's an issue, which is probably supporting record wildcards. There you go. Closed, unfortunately. Lack of discussion. Okay. Yeah, unfortunate. But that's okay, like, it's totally fine. I think what we would do here is we would just write S, like SS for string stats, and then we should be able to write ss.string, ss.length, and ss.vowel count if I understand correctly. I don't, apparently. Okay, string. Why are you doing this to me? String stats. Is that what it's called? Why is this complaining? Can I not put this here at all? I don't understand. Oh, that has to be in parentheses. I wasn't expecting that. Okay. So in Haskell, you don't have to put that in parentheses. All right. The error was a little strange. Although I guess I didn't read the whole thing. Let's read the whole thing just because I'm curious. Oh, okay. So it is thinking that this is one argument. So actually, this error is not that bad. I just didn't read the whole thing. All I could see was data constructor. So yeah, it says we're giving 0 arguments in a case expression, but actually those arguments are just to the right of it. So in Haskell, that's totally fine. Oh yeah, you said that. That's funny. And in PureScript, in Haskell you don't need it. In PureScript you do, which is fine. Like, it doesn't bother me that much. It's just I wasn't expecting that. All right. So this is how you prove isomorphisms, by the way. If you can write these functions, these two functions, and they like actually round trip, then you have an isomorphism. Oh, okay. So apparently we can just... That's really useful. We can just pattern match out the things. Like that. So we don't have to pattern match out specifically those things. So this is pretty close to record wildcard syntax-ish. It would stink if there was a lot more. I need to turn this down just a tiny bit in my ears. It's a little bit loud. Okay. Cool. These functions prove that this thing is isomorphic. I guess we should write like a round trip test, but I think this is hopefully obvious enough that these are isomorphic. Inhabitants. The no information loss part of isomorphisms is very important. At first glance, you might think string and int are isomorphic, since any int can be converted into a string, but not any string can be converted into an int. Yeah, this is named field puns, right? There's also some funny things that you can do. I think there's some weird things you can do with named field puns that are like really cool. But I always forget what they are. Anyway, that's a good one as well. Yeah, this is kind of a mind-bending concept. Sure. Okay. The number of inhabitants in string is greater than the number in int. Yeah. I really should pay for pretzel so I don't have to have that in the chat. It just kind of gets in the way, and I feel like it's not a good thing. I want to listen to music. Wait, I'm not supposed to listen to music during this. Son of a gun. Crap. I wonder if I can separate out the audio later. I hope so. Okay. Oh well. Hopefully I can fix that. It shouldn't be a problem, I don't think. Yeah, all of these go on YouTube, which is the issue. They are separate channels right now, but I don't know what happens when they get up to ooh, gate. That's a good idea. I didn't think about that. I don't know how to do that, but I see what you're saying now. Yeah, it's definitely much lower than my voice. Like, it's probably only like at its loudest, well, on this scale, 35 decibel, whereas like I'm 15. Again, it's a relative scale, so. Anyway, all right, here we go. Let's look at some types and calculate their inhabitants. So this is called cardinality, which I think, yeah, I think so. It's just how, like, what matters is what happens when it gets to Twitch, because there are separate channels on my computer right now, but will they remain separate channels on Twitch, like when I export the video and then try to separate them? Because I definitely want to remove the audio channel, the second one. We'll have to see. But I could also try a gate. That's not a bad idea. Like, just remove anything lower than, you know, a certain threshold and see if I can get most of the audio out. The only issue is that, yeah, I'm not recording locally. Here's the issue, is Pretzel has a YouTube safe thing, and I'm not currently using the YouTube safe. So I think that there could potentially be issues with that. But again, I'm not 100% sure. So, okay. Let's move on. That was a weird aside, but I'm not going to stop listening to music because it's too late now. All right, so variant, this, that, the other. It's easy to calculate this. There are 3 inhabitants. Let's try another. First is a Boolean. Second is a variant. We know that variant has 3. Boolean has 2. Should be the sum of those things, which is 5. Yep, there it is. There's all 5 inhabitants. And that's why we call it a sum type. I kind of said that before, but I'm glad that it's in the book. Product types. So we get a Boolean variant, which is a Boolean and a variant. So this is like or, Boolean or a variant, Boolean and a variant. And then this is multiplicative. So it's 6. Okay. With a product type, we consider all inhabitants, 2 times 3, that's why it's product. When the types are ORed, as in dual result, we add, and when the types are ANDed, that's funny, I just said that out loud. Okay. The bar tells us that we're adding the inhabitants on each side. Okay. So, this would be, let's see here. The number of inhabitants are A for have it and 1 for do not have it. This means that the number of inhabitants for sometimes is A plus 1. Yeah, so whatever the inhabitants are for A plus 1. If A is a Boolean, then it's 2 plus 1. Cool. Okay, new types. We just learned how to create our own types to model our problem domain. Now let's look at how we might model some simple problems. Okay. So I don't know if I'm going to need this code but we might need this code. We can just copy it later, I guess. So we have a full name, which takes a first, a middle, and a last name, and then just appends them. So this operator, I'm sure we'll talk about later, but it comes from the semigroup class. Maybe that's not exactly true in PureScript, but that's how I think about it. And it basically just means like append these things, and it's generic over different types. So it's natural to append strings by just putting them together. And that's what this means. If we had numbers, it's a little more complicated because what do you do with two ints when you smash them together? Well, it depends. Do you want to sum them or do you want to make a product out of them, for example? So there are, yeah, anyway. We'll talk about that later, so don't worry about that too much if you're confused. Or feel free to ask questions and we can discuss it. It's fine. Forgetting now that our function will have two spaces between first and last and middle name. Can you see something wrong with our function? What's wrong with our function? Oh, yeah, sure. There's nothing enforcing us to give first, middle, and last in this order. Okay, so we can do this, which is kind of better, but you still have exactly the same problem because this thing is not like, unless you define specifically a first name in some place, then sure, you couldn't do this, but you can still call this with any string. So it doesn't really help. We wrap all of our strings in unique types. We destructure with pattern matching. So this is the pattern matching that we're talking about. We're ripping out this string right here and calling it first. And then this will cause a compiler error. I still think that in this particular case, I would probably still just use a record with 3 strings that are first, middle, and last, because it's a little harder to screw that up, but you could still screw it up. Okay. Yeah, so when you have these kinds of monomorphic single types, on 39 here, you have a record in a type. Can you have a record in data, and what's the difference? So if we want to define this as a data, the only difference is we need a data constructor. So we have AB equals tuple first. I'm having a really hard time typing today, if you can't tell. Which is funny. I feel like I was very good yesterday. Oh, but I can't do that. So that's the only difference. There we go. So this one is an alias. It will not have a type constructor. This one is a data constructor. Sorry, that one's a data constructor. So you need a corresponding type and data constructor in that case. Yep, exactly. Oh, I forgot to answer your question, by the way. Sorry, I totally got sidetracked. I fixed that issue and then we went off on another tangent. So we wanted to see if we could write this function. What? Why? Copy selection. What are you doing? So we could have this function, and it should be easy enough, I think, to just write. Maybe you just write this. Oh, like that. So we're getting into a bit of some like more complicated stuff, but it's not that bad. We could use our tuple definition up here to I think fix this. I don't think you need. Yeah, exactly. So in Haskell, this is totally fine, but in PureScript, you explicitly have to do this. So it sounded like you mentioned some Haskell stuff, so you're probably a little familiar with it. But like the compiler told us what to do, basically. Let's read the error again just to see if it's good. I don't remember. It just says this is undefined. Oh, there we go. While inferring the type, it's having trouble like understanding, I guess, that this. I don't know what it's having trouble understanding, if I'm honest, but we can fix it by just saying for all A, B in this case. Oops. Cool. So you could have a first and second function that take tuples like this, and I presume that this is how that tuple library is actually implemented, maybe. But I think it has the nice syntax using, well, nicer syntax, I think, using parentheses, but I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. New types, only one data constructor and only one parameter. So you can actually have a first name A. So it doesn't have to be monomorphic, but it can only be polymorphic to N. Like, I don't even know how to say that in English. With one type variable, one parameter. There's got to be a name for that. Onery? Anyway. It does behave like scope type variables. So, yeah, like that's one of the sort of default extensions in PureScript is that. Yeah, that's fine. Unary. Okay, so common library types. There are commonly used types. Void. This is the empty set with no elements. There's a concept of a void type with zero inhabitants. In PureScript and Haskell, this type is called void. There are no inhabitants of void, so it's like, I think there's an absurd function to instantiate it or something, but it just errors, if I understand right. At least that's how it behaves in Haskell. Void is probably the least used. Yeah, I don't even know that I've come across a valid use case of void. Maybe I have. Anyway. Yeah, no inhabitants is actually still one inhabitant. All right, so what are we trying to do here? You might be wondering how you would define a type that has no inhabitants. Yeah, that's pretty funny. It's good for IO actions that are infinite loops. Okay. Yeah, I guess I haven't come across the need for this yet. Okay, there's another much more clever and simpler solution. At first glance, this may be confusing, so let's break it down. Oh, right. So that's a good point. So like, in cases where you like aren't going to use the thing, you can stick void there. Yeah, I guess that's true. I have done that in Halogen. You're right. Good point. Okay. Much more clever and simpler solution. Data void, void, void. So this is just like a recursive type with void to infinity. Yeah, that's okay. So it's impossible to construct a void since its data constructor requires void. Yeah, this is kind of weird. It is cute, yeah. Like, it's a very funny way to solve the problem. I don't know if this is actually how it's done, but it's you are forced to write bottom, basically. And you can't. So Is that the right way to say that? I think so. You're forced to write bottom. Anyway, I might be right. I don't know. You shouldn't listen to me anyway. That's what I like to say. All right, so this is a terminating definition because we can eventually input the end. This is basically how cons lists are built. Okay, cool. Unit. The unit set. No, Google. I don't need your help. Okay. The unit type is this. It has one inhabitant called a unit. It often appears here in your main function and in any function that doesn't return anything. Okay, cool. We don't talk that much about unit. That's fine. I've used unit in halogen as well. When you don't want to do anything and you're just kind of like putting a null there. Not a null, a unit. Maybe anyone who's coded C, you know, we have null, blah blah blah, billion dollar mistake, blah blah blah. PureScript solves this problem by having no nulls. And instead we use this type called maybe, which is, I mean, the most useful type, I think, ever. I feel like I use this all the time. Second, I am plugging my phone. Maybe types are amazing, and they make sort of null checking much easier because you don't need to. You just like use maps and stuff like that. Anyway, yeah. So we have a polymorphic type constructor with two inhabitants, nothing, and a just A. So again, this is like the inhabitants of A plus 1. And then we have this person that is geez, that's dark. A death date is a maybe date because, you know, some people can be alive. Kind of a dark example, but yeah, really makes you think. Oh no. I'm sorry, I'm laughing, but this is kind of dark for me. Okay. Anyway, yeah, so here it is. This person, Joe Mama, he's alive and well, but then someone died. Very sad. Yikes. Okay. So yeah, one thing to point out again is this is that record update syntax, and it's the only time you'll see an equals in here. Yeah, I can't. This is a great and horrible example at the same time. Wow. Okay. Anyway. How's it going out there? Everybody good? All right. JavaScript. We have some constants. What's up with this? We did not initialize y. Still alive? Good.